Hello fellow makeup lovers, how are you guys doing today? So I'm super excited for this video because it has been very long awaited, but fingers crossed, hopefully worth the wait. Today we're going to be discussing the Alter Ego Goddess palette in comparison to the Natasha Denona Gold palette. I absolutely love the color scheme of these two palettes. It's a stunning mixture of neutrals with some pops of bluey greens, which is so up my alley, and it's just the exact kind of pop I want. And when I go for a neutral look, I reach for one of these two palettes depending on whichever one is closer to me, honestly. So I received the Alter Ego Goddess palette originally in PR, and I was pretty excited about it just because I've always loved the color scheme, but I could never justify the Natasha Denona price tag. So here's what it looks like on the inside. I did go ahead and rearrange the shades so that they would match the Natasha Denona Gold palette, just because I thought that would make it a little bit easier for comparison's sake, and so you could visualize how similar they are. But I received this in PR. I was grateful, and I started using it, and I started using it and using it and using it, and I just could not stop reaching for it. I probably used it for like a full month, and I was like, I absolutely love this color scheme, and it intrigued me so much to try the original gold palette, which I've wanted for a really long time. I got a new job, and this was my treat myself moment because it went on sale on Beautylish, and it felt like this was almost like a tester, like how much will I really be inspired by this color scheme. And because I loved it so much, I decided to go ahead and purchase this one. So I got the gold palette I think maybe 2 months ago now, and I have been testing it out since. I really wanted to do a thorough job and just try all the shades and just be able to give you my complete opinions. So here's what the gold palette looks like on the inside. As you can see, it is very beautiful. The shadows are obviously much bigger. That's the most obvious comparison you can draw right off the bat, is that the Alter Ego palette is much smaller. I actually really like the Alter Ego's packaging. It's a very nice soft matte finish, and I like that it's smaller because it's more travel friendly. But even travel aside, if you just want to throw this in like a regular makeup bag, it fits so much better. It's much smaller, so I do personally prefer the size of the Alter Ego. Just so I don't forget to talk about it, I'm going to quickly mention the price and the amount of product you get. So the Alter Ego Goddess palette retails for $16, and I know that you can find different promo codes to save money off, and it has a total net weight of 13.5 grams or 0.48 ounces. It is also cruelty free. And then the gold palette has a retail price of $129, but again, you can, if you wait and you're strategic about it, get it on sale. Between Beautylish had this 20% off for a little while. I know Sephora does friends and family, and then they do like the VIB sales, and I think Natasha, for holiday last year, she had 30% off for Black Friday, so possibly this will be available during that this year. So I would say definitely wait, don't pay full price for this if you are interested in purchasing. So the gold palette has 37.5 grams of product, and the goddess palette has 13.5 grams. So you're getting 2.7 times more product in the gold palette than the goddess palette, which that's probably only important to someone who like pans eyeshadows and uses the same palette every single day. Okay, so now that we're done with the boring information, really quickly, the format of this video is going to be, obviously right now is the introduction, and then I'm going to jump into a demonstration, and I went ahead and used Natasha Denona on one side and Alter Ego on the other side, and I did not tell you what I used during the entire demonstration. I'll tell you afterwards, so you can kind of get an unbiased, just a clear look, and see if you can tell as I'm blending, as I'm applying the shades, which one you think is the more expensive one. I think that's always interesting to hear. So if you want to link or leave down below which eye you think is which, I would be really curious to see if you guys get it right or wrong. Honestly, when I'm doing dupes and people get it wrong, it makes me feel very accomplished, because it's like, yes, I made you think, but you were wrong. I found something very comparable. So I'm curious to see if you'll be able to pick it out or not. Which side is Alter Ego? Which side is Natasha Denona? So we're going to jump into the demonstration, and then I'm going to go ahead and do swatches, and I'm going to do each one like one by one, like Alter Ego, Natasha Denona, Alter Ego, Natasha Denona, so you can see them right next to each other. There is pretty much a comparable shade for every single shade in the palette, so it'll be just one after another. And then at the end, I'm going to go ahead and give my personal thoughts on which palette I think is better, the pros, the cons, and which palette I would recommend for different people. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on into the application. Okay, so jumping right on into the demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and just hold both of the palettes up for y'all and show you what shade I'm using, but I'm not going to tell you which brand is which side yet until the end, just because I want you guys to kind of have an unbiased moment to see if you can tell which is which. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with Dijon, which is this shade here, and this shade here. I'm living in shadow.
you know? Don't you know? I fell for fools gold. I fell for fools gold. What did I know? What did I know? I fell for fools gold. I fell for fools gold. What did I know? What did I know? You were fool's gold. Oh my God. Yes, I did. Oh my God. Yes, I did. Oh my God.
Alright, next I'm going to go ahead and take the shade Python, which is this matte teal. And I'm going to pop that onto my outer V.
And I did it all for love. Yes, I did it all for love. Oh, they say fools believe in it, so I guess I'm one of them. Oh, don't you know? I fell for fools gold. I fell for fools gold. What did I know? What did I know? I fell for fools gold. I fell for fools gold. What did I know? What did I know? You were fool's gold. Oh my God. Yes, I did.
Alright, now that I have that shadow pretty much placed down, I'm going to go ahead and take my previous brush and just blend the edges. When I go in between eyes, I just wipe it off on my pants, to be honest, so that I'm not cross-contaminating. So I went in with 2 layers on this side to achieve this depth, so I'm going to go ahead and after blending out this side, do the same with one of the Python shades.
Take a moment right here, feeling like it's out gear, driving towards the sun with the roses.
Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and use this shade here called Aurora, and I'm going to apply it with my finger just because that's what I personally like to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and tap that over the outer half of my lid.
Hold on, don't let go. Running, running, no. Keep running.
Right now, you know I have to do it. I'm going to go ahead and go in with Lime Chrome. Again, just taking that on my finger, and I'm going to go ahead and pop it onto the front of my lid to start off with, and then whatever's left over, I'll tap over. I wiped off my tiny crease brush, and I'm just going to go ahead and gently blend out the edge right here where I put Lime Chrome. Just get that off because I like a more diffused look. Just for reference, you can go ahead and take a little look at how much fallout there is on each side. This side has a crazy amount of fallout, so I'm going to go ahead and just take a little bit of powder and try and cover it a little bit, but I'm definitely going to have gold flecks sitting underneath my eyes. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and take the shade Brass, right here. And I'm gonna pop that onto the outer half of my lower lash line. Actually, I'm gonna take just a touch of the navy and pop that on the lower lash line as well, just to make it a little bit deeper. Alright, now I'm gonna go ahead and take the middle shade in both palettes called Oro, and I'm gonna pop that onto the front half of the lower lash line. Alright, last but not least, gonna go ahead and grab the white sparkly shade called Sparks. I'm not gonna use any glitter glue today, just for the sake of a demonstration. Just gonna go ahead and pop that onto the front of my lid, or sorry, not the front of my lid, my inner corner. Alright, so there is the finished eyeshadow look. Just gonna give you one last moment to look and decide and comment which side you think is Natasha Denona, which side is Alter Ego. Alright, really quickly before we jump into swatches, I thought I would go ahead and tell you guys which side is which. I think you've waited long enough. So this side is Natasha Denona and this side is Alter Ego. I would love to know if you got it right or wrong. Alright, so now let's go ahead and do some swatches. Alright, so starting off with the iconic shade Lime Chrome. I have them both swatched out. So first we have Natasha Denona. This is a really beautiful, interesting shade. It has a very, very pink base to it, and then a like electric green shift, and then here we have Alter Ego. So I would say that I tried to go ahead and do the same amount of product for both of these swatches. I think that they have a very similar shift to them. I'm actually going to go ahead and add a little bit more to Alter Ego just to show you. They have basically the exact same shift to them. It's really, really beautiful. I would say that Lime Chrome is a little bit more intense, a little bit more silky. The texture is just a touch more. However, I feel like on the lid, they do look pretty comparable. They're not super, super different. Lime Chrome is just a little touch better. So take that as you will. Okay, next we have the shade Aurora, and I feel like these two swatched out on the finger look very similar, and the color is similar, but the textures of these two are completely different. So starting off, we have Natasha Denona, and this one swatches horribly. Like, it looks like it's just not a beautiful swatch, and the first time I used this on the eye, I was so amazed because it is so beautiful on the eye. It has so many beautiful sparkles in it. I can see in person, it's just for some reason it doesn't swatch the way that you think it would, so it seems like it would be disappointing, but I feel like on the eye it has such a like dimensional sparkle that it is very, very beautiful. Whereas the Alter Ego palette, it's the same shade, but it's basically a true metallic, so it looks swatched wise like it looks like it's so much better. But I feel like on the eye, this does come off super pigmented and you can see it more, and it is really beautiful. They're both beautiful, but I think that the Natasha Denona one has a little bit more of a sparkle to it. The texture is almost a little bit more slick, like a topper. It is very, very beautiful, and I think that both of these two mixed with these two, the way that they like go across the lid, is stunning. So it's kind of hard to say which one is better than the other because I feel like they just are completely different formulas and it depends on what you like. However, I will say that this swatch I feel is very misleading because when you put it on the eye, it does not look like that. Like, the sparkles are everything. Alright, next we have the shade Brass, which here's the swatches. I'm just going to say it, Natasha Denona one wins 100% on this shade. It is so thick and metallic. It has almost a duochrome to it. It is one of the most intense shades. It's incredible. And then here is the Alter Ego one. It does not have any type of duochrome. It's more of a true gold, and I mean, you can tell, like, look at the texture between these two. The Natasha Denona wins completely for me. I do feel like you can definitely tell the difference on the eye between those two. So there are the first 3 shades. Alright, next I have the shade Python, and there's definitely a big difference between these two. They're both the really deep matte shade. This one is Natasha Denona, and the formula of this is so creamy. Like, it feels almost wet to the touch when you're swatching it, and it doesn't look as pigmented, but it does get very deep on the eye, and I find it very easy to build, very easy to blend. I definitely really like that formula, and I find that this one is more of a blue teal, whereas the Alter Ego one I think is a little bit more of a green teal. I definitely can see a difference in their color. I don't know if you guys can. The Alter Ego one's just a little bit more green. It's not a huge difference, but it is there. Alright, next we have the shade Dijon, and the formula of these two feel very similar, just the texture. It's a very soft, just pretty regular, like, creamy matte formula. I wouldn't say the Natasha Denona one feels as, like, creamy as the previous matte shade. So here is Natasha Denona Dijon, which you can see is very smooth. And then here is the Alter Ego one, which I feel like swatched out it looks a little bit less smooth, but surprisingly enough, I actually really like the Alter Ego one a little bit more. I find that it's a touch more yellow. It looks a little bit more mustard in the crease. I think if you're using a bunch of colors, you won't really be able to tell a difference all that much. It kind of has a very similar base shade to it, so if that's just your transition, then you're not going to see a big difference. But if you use this as a crease shade and then you just throw a gold on the lid and that's basically all of your look, I think you can tell that the Alter Ego has a little bit more of a yellowness to it, which is personally my aesthetic. I love that kind of color. I think it is so beautiful, especially mixed in with the blues and the greens. So it just depends on what you like. But I think that the formula of both of those are very similar. They blend out similar. They build up similarly. So I like both of them. But I like the color of the Alter Ego one just a touch more. Okay, next I have the shade Sandstone. And to be fair, all of the really neutral, just like soft brown shades, they're kind of similar. It's not my favorite. I feel like they're a little bit repetitive and I'm not passionate about them, so I'm just gonna swatch them and move on. I don't really have a lot to say. I do like the Natasha Denona one a little bit more with this one because I feel like I like the color more, and I do feel like they build up, they have a little bit more depth, but overall I'm just like, a brown is a brown is a brown. I'm not as passionate about those, so there's what they look like. I feel like the Alter Ego one can be built up. They'll look similar in the crease. It'll be fine, but I'm just, a brown is a brown. Sorry if that's the shades that you really like in this palette. Those are, I use them all the time. I use them as transition shades with the other colors, but it's just like, meh, like it works. Like it builds up, it's there, it does its thing, like, nah. It's not serious to me. Whereas it's like the greens, like I have things to say. So there is the second row or column, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so the next shade we have is the shade Sparks, which here's what they look like. You can probably see the texture difference on my finger. So just making sure my arm is dry so I'm not messing up any of the swatches. This first one here is Natasha Denona, and I don't know if you can tell, but it's a lot thinner and it's more, it almost feels like a cream. It feels like a topper. It has that consistency to it. It has a really beautiful like white to gold shift to it, which the other shade does as well. So here's Alter Ego. But the Alter Ego one is more of just a plain light powder. So I feel like even though the colors kind of similar, because of the texture difference, I actually can see the difference on the eye. I don't know if you can tell on my eye there, just I feel like the way that the Natasha Denona one looks, it just looks more hydrated, which I don't even know if that makes sense, but I think it catches the light a little bit more pretty than the Alter Ego, although like I like the Natasha Denona one a touch more, but they are very comparable. You can barely see the difference. I'm sure if I asked someone, I'm like, which inner corner do you like, they wouldn't have much to say. It's a very tiny difference, but I do like how Sparks, the original Natasha Denona one, is just a touch more toppery. And also, if you put either of these with a glitter glue, perfection. It makes it just that much more intense. Okay, next we have the shade Oro here, and the first one is Natasha Denona. So this is like a true, just super yellowy gold. It is so intense. and then here is the Alter Ego version of it. So between these two, I do prefer the Natasha Denona one because it is a little bit brighter. Like it has more impact, like the color has more saturation. I don't know how to describe it. I feel like, you know, it's not that big of a difference, but I can see it, and being someone who loves color and who loves the brighter looks that I can get out of this palette, I do appreciate that little bit of difference with Oro. I also feel like Oro is more intense. It's kind of similar to the texture of brass, so there's a difference. It's just a very, very thick, intense, creamy metallic. And then the Alter Ego is just a little bit more of a powder. It's not quite as intense. It gives a similar look, but not exactly the same. I do feel like you could probably spruce it up a little bit, throw some glitter glue, use something to wet it, apply it with your finger, and you could probably get a pretty similar look, but just right off the bat, I do like the original Oro. Next, I have the shade Alchemist, and I do feel like the color of these two are very, very similar. Here's Natasha Denona, and here is Alter Ego. I think those look pretty like on point. The Natasha Denona is just a touch thicker. The formula is a little bit more intense, but I feel like those two on the eyelid, you cannot really tell a difference. I don't really reach for that color as much. It's kind of just a regular bronzy gold, which I've worn a few times and I like both of them. They work fine. They're good shadows, but I'm not as passionate about that one as you can tell. I'm sorry, I have to be honest. Like I said, I feel like those two on the eye would be very hard to tell a difference. So there is the third column. Okay, next I have the shade Aria, and I just realized I think I actually had Sandstone mixed up for the Alter Ego one. I should have switched those two shades because this one is a little bit more of that like softer, kind of almost like a peachiest tone. And then the Alter Ego one here is more... I had them mixed up, so those two are more comparable. I'm sorry about that. Like I said, these browns are so similar that it's hard even looking at the palette. I'm like, I know that they're supposed to correspond, but they all just look so similar. I should have double swatched them and just made sure. I actually dropped the palette earlier today, so I had to put them back, and my bad. I do apologize. So here is Natasha Denona, and here is Alter Ego. So I feel like the formula on those two are pretty similar. Again, just one of those like mid-tone matte brown transition shades. I really wish one of those were taken out and there was like another green option. That would be fabulous. Okay, next we have the shade Log, and I feel like in the pan, the Alter Ego one looks darker, but actually I do see a difference between these two. So here's Natasha Denona. Look at how smooth that is. And then here is Alter Ego. So I don't know if you can tell, but the Alter Ego is a little bit lighter, and I feel like it does not build up. It does not get deeper. When I layer it, I feel like it does not hold like as much depth as I would like it to, as being the darkest shade in the palette. So this is one of those where if you have a deeper skin tone and you want that really nice, rich, deep, dark brown, I definitely do think that the Natasha Denona one is much better, and it's going to deepen better if that's what you're looking at this palette for. I mean, I would not buy this palette for just that one shade, but I do prefer that option in the Natasha more than the Alter Ego. And then next we have the shade Teak, which this first one is Natasha Denona, and it does actually, I like this one more than the Alter Ego because I feel like it is deeper and it's more of a mid-tone. I mean, they're pretty similar colors, but I feel like this one has just a little bit more depth to it, and because there are so many light brown shades in these two palettes, I prefer to have that little bit of extra depth where I can go in with like this or the other one I swatched previously in the crease, and then I'll take Teak to deepen up the outer V, and it'll add just a little bit of depth, but nothing crazy or not as dramatic as going in with the deep brown or the deep teal. So as you can see, this is definitely the row that I'm the most excited about. This is my favorite row. Not. Right, so there is the fourth column. So on to the last three, we have the shade Kava here, and I feel like the color of these two are pretty similar. We're going to start off with Natasha Denona. So there's Kava, and here is Alter Ego. So I do feel like this is one of those cases where the colors are pretty similar, but the Natasha Denona one has a little bit of a different texture to it. It is more of that like slick toppery type feel, whereas the Alter Ego just feels like a regular powder shimmer shadow. They do both have like really tiny iridescent shimmers in there, and I like whenever I do something like more metallic all over the lid, I'll normally take this and like just use my finger and just pop it onto the very front of the lid, and it'll give a little bit more of that like really sparkly shimmeriness. So I do like both of those. Alright, so next we have the shade Varus, I think. I'm not sure how quite to pronounce that, but it's kind of just a taupey, like lighter, neutral bronze shade. This is probably my least favorite shade in the palette. I have used it a few times from both palettes just to make sure I'd be able to talk about it and give you my thoughts on it, and normally I end up throwing this on the lower lash line just for a little something, like a little color, but it doesn't do too much. It's a satin shade. The Natasha Denona one, which is right here, is a little bit more intense. But overall, I feel like these look pretty similar on the eye. Alright, last but not least, we have the shade Aria, which is like a light satiny gold. And I do find these two to actually be pretty comparable as well. So there's Natasha Denona, and here is Alter Ego. I actually honestly like the Alter Ego one a little bit more here. I feel like it just has a little something more to it. I think it's just because the Natasha Denona one is like a very, very soft satin. And the Alter Ego one I would still call a satin, but it just catches the light a touch more, which, you know, the more intense it is, the more I like it. Like, that's the automatic rule. Unless it's like flaky or creepy or like makes your lids look 1,000 years old, then maybe that's a little too far. But overall, I feel like these three shades are all actually pretty comparable the way that they apply on the eye. So there are the last ones. Okay, so on to my final thoughts between the two palettes. I don't even know where to begin because I still have a few things I want to say, but I think that I want to make it clear that I do really like the Goddess palette on its own. I think that it is really nice. I appreciate the formula. There's no duds. Everything is beautiful. I really like the way that they blend. I think that overall it's a really good formula, and I'm not disappointed by any means with this palette. I do really love it. In fact, even though I own the gold palette, I'm going to be a little sad to let this go and give it to my mom. And I mean, I feel like you guys can probably tell that I have used it a lot and loved it the last few months. I have a hair there, don't know where that came from, but I do really love this. It comes with a mirror. It has like that soft touch to it. It has like the little designs. Like, it is really, really nice on its own as its own palette. $16. Highly like it. I tried a few dupe palettes in the past from Shop Hush and I hated them. I thought that they were beyond awful. They did not work for me at all. They were not good. They didn't want to blend. They didn't want to build. The shimmers were lackluster. Like, I just really was not a fan, and so I think that would have stopped me from purchasing this. But now having it in my hand and knowing how it is and the formula, I do really love this, and I think that it is miles and miles and miles better than any other dupe palette that I've tried, which makes me really excited for the future and for whatever palettes they decide to come out with. They did send me their new, I think it might be Sahara palette or something like that, and even though it's a neutral palette, I am excited to dig into it just because I do genuinely love their formula. I don't just like this because it's a dupe. I like it as its own thing. So for me, I do recommend this palette. I feel like for anyone who wants to touch on a color scheme, who feels FOMO, but cannot purchase a really, really expensive palette, I think we've all been there. I feel like you can get a very, very, very comparable look for so much less. And it's like, yes, there are some shades from the gold palette that I like a little bit more, but then I have to stop and ask myself, like, do I like them $113 more? I don't know. I feel like for the just tiny little bit of difference, the tiny little bit that I like the Natasha Denona palette more, there is a huge giant price jump. So it's hard for me to recommend this because I do feel like this is so good, and I do truly, truly love it. Like, I think it's great. It's such a good palette. My only real con with this one is that I wish the deep brown got a little bit deeper. I wish that one was a touch richer, but I do think that most of us own a deep brown somewhere, so I do recommend this palette, and I like it a lot. Like, even if you have like a teenager in your life and you want to get them a really nice palette and give them like the vibes of the gold palette, because I do feel like it is such a good palette for everyone, no matter if you love color, if you love neutrals. I feel like it has such beautiful textures and different shades, like the options I really like, so I think this would be a great gift to probably someone who's a little bit younger getting into makeup and stuff like that. I also, like I said before, I personally prefer the size of this. I think it's more travel friendly. It's really nice. So the gold palette, do I regret purchasing it? Absolutely not. I do really love it, and being someone who is so enthusiastic and into makeup, like I feel like part of this is not just like what it looks like on the eyes. I feel like it's the experience, it's the packaging, it's like the Natasha Denona name, it's just everything about this. It feels like every time I use this, it's like a luxury, it's a treat, like it feels so just, it's a good feeling. Whereas this, it's like I love the looks, but it's just not quite the same aesthetic. Not the way it looks on the eyes, but just using the product. I do prefer some of the textures in here a little bit more. I do prefer some of the colors more. And I feel like the reason, or the way that I would personally recommend this palette is, I think that if you are like financially secure, can't relate, then this would probably be a good purchase. And if it's something you see yourself using all the time, constantly, like really getting your money's worth out of it, if you see it on a really good discount, again, which is what I waited for, I think that there would be ways to kind of, you know, make it a little bit less crazy. I also think that if you did have the budget for it and you were getting a gift for someone and you wanted to make them feel really special, like this would be like an aha, like jaw-dropping, like you got me this kind of moment, at least for someone who's into makeup. I think, you know, this is such a classic. I don't know, I just think that giving someone a Natasha Denona palette would be a very special gift, and gifts are definitely in my love language, so I just think like it would be a really good feeling to give this to someone else or to yourself. I did want to mention really quickly that this did not affect my honest opinion at all, but I did reach out to Alter Ego just because I love this palette so much, and they gave me an affiliate code, so I will have that listed in the description box down below in case you want to save a little bit of money, and I would also make a small commission. But that's basically my overall thoughts on the palettes. I would love to hear down below what you think of this video. If you have any questions at all, I tried to get all of the information that I had fit into this, so I hope you enjoy. I'm sure it's a little bit of a longer one because I've been babbling for a really long time. And also, I did want to mention really quickly, in case you are curious, I did also go through my single shadow collection and I duped all of these shades. So I have a single shadow for Lime Chrome, which is Samba from Vanessa's Vanity. I'm not going to wait to tell you. It is like the exact same shade. It's so good. $8. Highly recommend. So I am going to do a video on like duping this with my single shadows in case you're curious and you don't want to buy a palette and you just like want like 1 or 2 shades, and maybe that'll be really good for you. Or if you got this palette and then you wanted to dupe the super special shades that I have duped, like the brass and Lime Chrome, and add that to this and kind of, you know, do a little thing, you know what I'm saying. And then also I had a discussion with Emily Han about the Metropolis palette that just came out from Natasha Denona and how there are some similar shades in there and this, so I'm also going to do a comparison of that hopefully in the next month coming up. So stay tuned if you are ready for lots of gold content and you're as obsessed with this palette as I am, because it's a thing. It's weird. Okay, so that's everything. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.